Watch as a drop of ink touches paper. In that moment, something profound occurs. A liquid becomes permanent. A thought, which existed only as electrical impulses in your brain, suddenly has physical form. It can outlive you by centuries. Kings die. Empires fall. But words written in ink endure. This is the story of how humanity learned to defeat time itself. One drop at a time. Try to imagine humanity without written words. Every lesson learned once, then forgotten when its teacher died. Every discovery made again and again because nothing could be recorded. Love expressed only in the moment. Never preserved. Stories told but never kept. For hundreds of thousands of years, human thoughts were as temporary as breath, until we learned to trap them in ink. This is the story of ink. A liquid so powerful it changed what it means to be human. A simple mixture of pigment and water that allowed thoughts to escape the prison of individual minds. With ink, a person could speak to the future, could teach people not yet born, could declare love that would last long after death. Ink gave words immortality, and in doing so, it gave humanity a kind of immortality too. Here's the paradox. Ink is fragile, just carbon particles suspended in liquid. It can fade, it can smudge, water can wash it away, fire can consume it. And yet, our oldest written words, carved with ink-like pigments thousands of years ago, still speak to us today. Egyptian hieroglyphs, Chinese oracle bones, Roman letters. The vulnerability of ink makes its survival all the more miraculous. Each ancient text is a small victory over oblivion. The story begins in darkness. 40,000 years ago, in caves across Europe and Asia, humans mixed charcoal with animal fat, creating the first ink. By flickering firelight, they pressed their hands against stone walls, leaving prints that said, "I was here. I existed." They painted animals, bison, horses, mammoths, not just to record what they saw, but to capture something eternal. These weren't just pictures. They were humanity's first attempt at immortality. What made those cave paintings last? Carbon. When organic material burns, it leaves behind pure carbon. Soot, lamp black, charcoal. Carbon is one of the most stable elements. It doesn't easily decay. Mix it with a binder, fat, tree sap, egg white, and you have ink that can survive millennia. Ancient peoples didn't understand chemistry, but they understood this. What comes from fire tends to last. Black from burning was their bridge to the future. In ancient Egypt, scribes perfected ink making into an art. They burned oil lamps to collect soot, then ground it with gum arabic from acacia trees. The result was liquid that flowed smoothly from reed brushes onto papyrus. Egyptian ink was so stable that texts written 5,000 years ago remain legible today. These scribes knew they weren't just recording information. They were creating messages that would outlive the pyramids themselves. Across the world in ancient China, a different approach emerged. Chinese scholars created solid ink sticks, compressed carbon mixed with pine resin and animal glue. To write, they ground the stick against a stone with water, creating fresh ink each time. This wasn't just practical, it was meditation. The act of grinding ink before writing became a moment to clear the mind, to prepare for the sacred act of putting thoughts on paper. Ink making was inseparable from the writing itself. In medieval Europe, a revolutionary ink emerged, iron gall ink, made from oak galls, strange growths caused by wasp eggs, mixed with iron salts and gum. This ink had a unique property. It bonded chemically with parchment, becoming part of the material itself. When you write with iron gall ink, you're not laying pigment on top. You're changing the very structure of the page. This is why medieval manuscripts, written 1,000 years ago, often look as fresh as yesterday. In every ancient culture, writing with ink was sacred. Buddhist monks copied sutras believing each character brought merit. Islamic calligraphers considered beautiful writing an act of worship. Jewish scribes wrote Torah scrolls with such reverence that a single error meant starting over. Why this universal sacredness? Because people understood. When you write in ink, you're not just recording. You're creating something that will speak long after your voice has gone silent. You're defying death itself. For thousands of years, ink meant hand-copied texts. Then came 1440 and Johannes Gutenberg's printing press. But the press alone wasn't enough. Gutenberg needed ink that could spread evenly on metal type, transfer cleanly to paper, and dry quickly without smudging. He invented oil-based printing ink, mixing soot with linseed oil and varnish. This new ink transformed everything. Suddenly, one book could become 1,000. Ideas could spread like wildfire. Ink had found its perfect partner. For centuries, writing meant constantly dipping quill or pen into an inkwell. Then, in the 1880s, the fountain pen arrived. Ink stored in a reservoir, flowing steadily through a gold nib by capillary action. Writers were liberated. They could write continuously, anywhere, without pause. Mark Twain wrote entire novels with fountain pens. Virginia Woolf carried hers everywhere. The fountain pen made writing intimate and portable. Thoughts could flow as fast as ink itself. In 1938, Laszlo Biro watched children playing with marbles, leaving trails on wet pavement. Inspiration struck. What if ink could flow like that? He invented the ballpoint pen, a tiny rotating ball transferring quick-drying ink to paper. No smudging, no leaking, no refilling for months. The fountain pen was elegant, but the ballpoint was democratic. Suddenly, everyone could afford to write. Ink became as common as air. The ballpoint pen put writing in every hand. Today's inks are marvels of chemistry, archival inks that resist fading for centuries, Gall inks that glide like silk, erasable inks that vanish with heat, UV-resistant inks for outdoor signs, conductive inks that create electronic circuits, security inks that prevent forgery. We've created inks for every purpose imaginable, but the principle remains the same. Carbon or pigment particles suspended in liquid, leaving permanent marks. Ancient cave painters would recognize what we're still doing, making thoughts visible, making words last. Ink has always been power. The Declaration of Independence, signed in iron gall ink in 1776. The Emancipation Proclamation, freeing millions. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Treaties ending wars. Constitutions founding nations. When something truly matters, we don't just speak it, we write it in ink. Because ink makes promises permanent. A signature in ink isn't just agreement. It's a binding of your word to time itself. What's written can be held, passed down, enforced. But ink's power isn't only political. Think of love letters written by soldiers from trenches, carried in pockets until the paper wore thin. Last letters from prisoners awaiting execution. Deathbed messages passed to children. These words in ink become sacred objects. They're held, reread until memorized, kept in drawers for decades. Why? Because ink captures not just words, but the moment of writing. The hand that held the pen, the heart that beat while forming each letter. Ink makes love permanent. It makes goodbye last forever. Writers have always known the pen is mightier than the sword. Totalitarian regimes fear writers above all others. They ban books. They censor newspapers. They imprison authors. Why such fear of ink? Because once words are written, they can't be unspoken. They spread. They're copied. They survive. A single poem in ink has toppled governments. A banned book becomes more powerful for being forbidden. Ink gives ideas immortality, and immortal ideas can't be killed. Not all ink serves grand purposes. Sometimes the most powerful words are the private ones. Anne Frank's diary, Virginia Woolf's journals, Frida Kahlo's letters to herself. These weren't meant for history, yet they became it. Writing in ink is thinking made visible. It's conversation with your future self. Every journal entry is an act of faith that tomorrow matters, that your thoughts deserve to last. In this way, keeping a diary is a quiet rebellion against death itself. Artists discovered ink could be more than words. Chinese calligraphers made letters into visual poetry. Rembrandt created entire worlds with pen and ink washes. Modern tattoo artists embed ink beneath skin, making bodies into living manuscripts. Ink became the medium where thought met beauty, where meaning became art. Every brushstroke in ink is both message and aesthetic object. Writing and drawing collapsed into one eternal mark. Consider the simple signature, your name in your own hand, written in ink. It's legally you. It authorizes, it authenticates, it promises. A signature can commit you to marriage, to debt, to war. It can transfer ownership of fortunes, sign the wrong paper, and your life changes. All because of ink formed in a particular way. Your signature is ink made into identity. When you sign, you're saying, "This is me, and I was here, and this matters." The ultimate act of making yourself permanent. Now we face a strange paradox. We type more words than ever, but use almost no ink. Our thoughts exist as pixels, as electrons, as magnetic patterns on hard drives. We write hundreds of messages daily that may vanish with a server crash. Are digital words truly permanent? A medieval manuscript in iron Gall ink survives 1,000 years. But will your emails exist in 100? Will your texts? We've made writing easier than ever, but have we made it last? Yet perhaps permanence has simply changed form. Digital archives preserve millions of documents. Cloud storage backs up our words across multiple servers worldwide. The Internet Archive saves websites that would otherwise disappear. Blockchain creates records that can't be altered or erased. We're building new kinds of permanence, not ink on paper, but data distributed so widely it can't be lost. Different from ink, yes, but perhaps just as eternal. The principle remains: making thoughts last beyond their thinkers. Interestingly, many are returning to ink. Bullet journals have become popular again. Handwritten letters feel special precisely because they're rare. People print important emails onto paper, sign crucial documents in ink. When something truly matters, we still reach for the pen. There's something about physical ink that digital can't replace. The weight of the page, the unique imperfections of handwriting, the knowledge that this specific object, this piece of paper with these ink marks, is singular, irreplaceable, real. What has ink taught humanity? That thoughts are worth preserving, that we owe something to the future, that our words, our ideas, our stories matter enough to make permanent. Every time someone writes in ink, they're making a statement. This is important. This should last. I want to be remembered. Or I want this truth to survive. Or I want this love to endure. Ink is ultimately about hope. Hope that tomorrow exists. That future eyes will read these words. That meaning can transcend mortality. Think about your own relationship with ink. Perhaps you have a love letter in a drawer. Words written long ago that still make your heart warm. Maybe a grandparent's signature on a birthday card. A note from a friend who's gone. These aren't just marks on paper. They're presences. Proof that someone existed, felt, thought, cared. When you hold something written in ink, you're touching the past. You're holding a moment that riffin to die. That's ink's real magic. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, consider this. Every word ever written in ink began as thought, Invisible electricity in a brain became visible mark on a surface, became permanent, became potentially eternal, from cave walls to scrolls, from manuscripts to printed books, from love letters to constitutions. Ink has carried humanity's most important thoughts forward through time. 40,000 years of humans saying, "This matters. This should last. I want to be remembered." As you drift towards sleep, remember, you are part of this story. Every note you've written, every signature you've made, every word you've put in ink, they're all acts of defiance against time. You're continuing what cave painters began 40,000 years ago. Making thoughts visible, making words last. Tomorrow, if you write something in ink, pause for just a moment. Feel the weight of that pen. Know that you're participating in humanity's greatest trick. Defeating death, one drop at a time. Rest now, knowing that the important things have been written down. The words that needed to last. They're safe in ink somewhere, love declared. Truths preserved, stories saved. You don't have to remember everything. Ink remembers for you. That's its gift to humanity. The permission to forget, because the important things have been made permanent. Sleep peacefully. The words will be there when you wake. Good night. So drift now into dreams. Dream perhaps of ancient scribes and future writers, of thoughts becoming permanent, of the simple miracle of a drop of liquid becoming forever. Dream of all the words still waiting to be written, all the thoughts that will outlive their thinkers, all the ink that will carry meaning into futures we can't imagine. And know that in the morning, if you have something worth saying, ink will be there, ready, waiting. Offering immortality, one word at a time. Sweet dreams.